So not to fluff his ego, but is he really the reason then that you became an audiologist? Keep your ego over there.
To be fair, yes.
I don't know, maybe. Hey guys, welcome back to the Dr. Cliff Show. I'm Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am joined today once again by my co-hosts, Dr. Kelsey Beck and Jenna Wingett. Welcome back to the show, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Dr. Beck, you were not here with us in the last episode, but we had Ashley here and Jenna, and we were talking about the Applied360 Discover consultation and the Applied360 Review consultations. So the differences between those, just for the audience to bring you up to speed, because today we're actually talking about the fitting processes that we put our patients through. But those Discover consultations are for people who are either new to hearing aids or they have hearing aids, but they're like, listen, these hearing aids are old, they're not doing what I want them to do. I want to switch to new technology, so I want a clean slate, basically. The Applied360 Review consultations are for individuals who have hearing aids, most likely hearing aids that are within the past 1 to 2 years of purchase, that they feel like they want to get more out of, so they kind of want a second opinion. So we put them through a process. Those processes are very similar to each other, although we do additional things on someone who has those newer hearing aids that we want to review how they're doing. But that kind of leads us into one of two different fitting protocols that we typically have for patients. We have our Applied360 Fit process for individuals who are getting brand new hearing aids, and then we have our Applied360 Refit process for individuals that we are refitting new hearing aids on. So we're going to kind of break those down for you guys. We're going to start off with the Fit process first. And so, Dr. Beck, I'll come to you first here initially. So what is it that we're actually doing in this fitting process? So someone says, yes, I want to move forward with treatment. We're getting them new hearing aids. What happens after that point?
It's a great question. So in our office, that Applied360 Fit, it starts off first with an hour and 15 minutes of an initial fitting visit, where we actually will measure how much sound is coming from that hearing aid inside of both of your ears. Make sure that our physical fit is absolutely perfect. Make sure we're not going to get any squealing feedback or anything that's going to be negative to the hearing experience to start off with. And so that during that entire hour and 15 minutes, we're doing all of that verification process through a process called real ear verification. Again, that's that measuring for your prescription for not only average level voices, but also for someone who's more loud spoken, and those soft inputs as well, because we do have the ability to control how much amplification is actually applied to different types of inputs to the device itself. And so if we're not precise exactly on how we're doing that, you don't hear as well. And that's not okay with us. So that's our first, honestly, the first 30 minutes even just of the actual fitting process. And then we're reviewing what are the hearing aids doing, giving kind of that overview of how they're functioning. And then we also begin to teach you how we're actually going to utilize the device. How do we put them in your ears? How do we take them out? Are we going to pair them for Bluetooth? All of those initial things to get everyone started in that first visit. And then we have our follow-up schedule, which is a 1 week, a 3 week, and a 6 week follow-up.
So in total, this initial fitting Applied360 Fit process is 4 total visits that someone would have to come in for and commit to, right? And now there are cases where we can do some of these visits in person, some of the visits we can do virtually, but that first visit that you just talked about, 100% mandatory, you have to be there, because real ear measurement that you were just talking about, that cannot be completed remotely. You cannot complete a successful physical fit of a hearing aid remotely. That all has to be done in the office. But we're often, if they're not going with custom ear molds that we already had pre-ordered for them, we're switching out different dome sizes and styles to see acoustically which one is the best fit. And then on top of that, which one physically is retained inside of the ear canal well and feels comfortable to them. And so a lot of the heavy lifting is that first initial visit that you're talking about, which is why we have an hour and 15 minutes scheduled for that. And then we go into the rest of them, which are all an hour long process. But Jenna, let's jump to you here. So what happens really at that first follow-up that is usually 1 or 2 weeks after that initial fitting that we do with them?
So right off the bat, we get a good perspective. We always tell our patients to take good notes about the things that they like and they don't like, because we can match them to their prescription, but then going about day-to-day life, you want different things out of the hearing aids. So we get a lot of feedback of the things that are good, things that are bad, so we can make any sort of adjustments to the hearing aids for the long run.
So a lot of clinics and all of us have done rotations or have worked at other clinics before. And so when you're in another clinic, typically when someone comes back for their first follow-up, if you even schedule an initial follow-up with them.
That's a big ol' if.
Yeah, because sometimes they're like, oh, well, okay, we've got your hearing aids fit. They spent like 30 minutes with you on the fitting, and they say, okay, let us know if you need anything beyond that point. Whereas we're a little bit more demanding of our patients' time. So, after that hour and 15 minutes, they come back for that hour follow-up. And we're kind of, it's more of a, they need to kind of like unload on us all the things that they notice, both good and bad. And then we proceed to grill them for the next
basically
15 minutes about like, okay, you say you're doing good here, but okay, let's talk about it. And then we really dig down into finding out how they're really doing. And then oftentimes, if they have their significant other spouse there, we'll ask them how they feel that the patient's doing. And if they're like, well, I don't know, it's actually, it's a little bit better, but he's still struggling in background noise, and he reported he was doing fine.
Right. Well, and there's an element too that I like to talk about, especially with a spouse and the patient themselves, is that we don't always know what we don't know, right? So, we are hearing better in a noisy place, sure. So this seems like it's great because this initial fitting has been so good so far. And we don't necessarily notice that while we might be asking for fewer repetitions now, the spouse says, well, you're still not really, engaging with the party as a whole, right? So there are things that you just don't know until you have that other perspective of, a significant other, a loved one, who can also give us that information. So their participation is actually incredibly important to me.
That's just why we generally request that we have someone who is a main communication partner come with to the consultation so we can truly understand what the difficulties are, because from the patient perspective, they might not be fully aware of where the communication breakdowns occur. And so then it's also helpful for the significant other to come to the Applied360 Fit initial fitting appointment so they can understand what's actually going into this whole process. One of the things that I notice is that everyone's blown away with like, wait, hold on. Like, I had no idea that all this stuff went into the programming of a hearing aid. You were talking about different input levels. So if you have trouble hearing someone who's a soft talker, we have a certain amount of amplification we need to apply for that. You get a loud talker, like a lot of us here sitting here right now, you need to apply less amplification to their voices because otherwise they just get way too loud. And so when we're running all these measures, and we actually hold our computer screen or position our computer screen, we don't hold it, we position our computer screen where it's facing.
The image of that is great.
Right? like, okay, here we go. But we position our computer screen to where they can see everything that we're doing while we're doing it. And that's a really big thing that we're advocates for, because we believe that collectively that the more that a patient understands about the treatment of their own hearing loss, the better they are going to be able to articulate to us where their difficulties are at, and just feel more confident that their hearing aids are actually fitting the right way.
Well, I think too, the big part of that is also the explanations that we give of the things that they are seeing, right? Because I know I've been at other clinics where, yes, maybe they saw us do real ear verification, but it wasn't, common practice for us to explain what we're looking at. What is the hearing aid doing? And what I like about what you said as well is that it does build that foundation of communication in us getting to start to speak the same language, right? Because a lot of the times with reporting, the patient might say, X, Y, or Z, and then we're, of course, now having to translate it into what does that mean for a hearing aid and how do we program that? But if we can start merging those languages together by giving a good foundation of that starting point, it gives us the rest of the time to build upon that together and really have being the whole fitting process, all 4 of those visits be very collaborative.
So this is a very interesting point, and I'll give an exact example of what you just referenced here. So we fit someone to their full prescriptive targets, low, mid, and high frequency, to a T. They come back a week later for their first visit, and they're like, I've been doing better, but like certain things sound like too much. So crinkling paper, or the faucet, or the things sound tinny.
The S sound
the
is
S
really
sounds are kind of harsh or
yeah.
sibilant, right? And we're like, oh, okay, well, those things that you're telling me, even if they don't know what's causing it, we know that that's more of the high frequency or resonant frequency programming of their hearing aid. So we can then go in and be like, hey, okay, remember how I programmed you up to your full prescription? We can even bring up the screen to show them. That's this frequency range right here. So now we have an option. We can take that away. We can actually we can take anything away we want to. We can literally make no sound come out of the hearing aid, right? So the question is, how much do we want to keep in there in terms of the amplification? So we then kind of discuss with them, well, here's the trade-offs that you may they have to experience. I can get rid of all the tinniness, all the sharpness, all the harshness, but if that reduces your speech intelligibility or it prevents you from understanding speech and background noise, is that worth it to you? And they may be like, that's totally worth it to me. And then great, then we taper it down. And we try to limit the amount of reduction of intelligibility.
And I like that too, because we almost sort of try to set them up for potentially what that could do, right? So yes, this is going to take that tinniness down. If you run into this challenge, if you run into lack of clarity in this particular environment or with this type of voice, tell us, and then we can have another discussion on how do we want to bring that back in, right? So again, just very collaborative.
And they feel like confident. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I understand what's actually happening, so I can make a more informed decision on what direction I think I want to go. And Jenna, we see this all the time.
Yeah, I think that's an important difference of us just not making decisions for them, like informing them, these are the options available. This is a give and take that comes with it. What avenue do you want to take? And I think that helps in the long run too, because if they make a decision and then they're like, I didn't like this, then we can be like, we explained it to you. Do you want to try the other avenue then? So I think it's just the information is the better part of things to make sure that they're making the decision that they want.
And then too, when you do make a change and that thing does happen, it's not alarming, right? It's not something that they're confused by, like, oh, these hearing aids, they just stink. My provider doesn't know what they're talking about. No, we talked about that potential risk of this not going as well. And again, so it's not as alarming if something does go slightly sideways, that there's also then the confidence of the solution of, well, I know I can bring that back, might bring something else back, but now I know this is not worth it to me.
And sometimes they're just so early in the fitting process at this point, because we're talking that they're 1 week into treatment.
1 week in.
Right?
We're not even at 3 and 6 weeks yet.
Right, so they're 1 week in, and it's like, okay, so oftentimes this will happen. We explain to them the trade-off, and we're also like, well, here's the thing. In another week or two, your brain might fully acclimate to this, and you get all the benefit and none of the negative. And so you guys wouldn't be, but you guys might be surprised with how many individuals come back after a 2 or 3 week time period and like, oh yeah, like that doesn't bother me anymore, and I'm hearing great. So there, it just depends on how we communicate the information with the individual, which is exactly why these appointments take so long. So again, industry standard is to, if you have a follow-up visit, that follow-up visit's usually going to be around 30 minutes long. Some clinics might be an hour, but that would literally be the end of it. And after that one round of tweaking, they say, okay, call us if you need us. And we're still not done yet. So we go another 2 weeks after that one.
Well, and that also brings me to another part of that, industry standard, where industry standard is not even doing that real ear verification necessarily for that initial fitting. So on top of that kind of, first fit generic piece where we don't actually know because we've not measured what's coming from that hearing aid into somebody's ears, we're now making tweaks based on something that we actually don't know that the hearing aid is doing, right? Because you could have, an over amplification. I see it a lot in especially certain brands of hearing aids, but we sometimes on that first fit will just get this huge over amplification at 2K, right, at 2 kilohertz, which, yes, would sound loud and sharp and tinny, but we start now rolling off 4,000 hertz because that's where the S sound can typically sound the most sibilant. Well, now we've not solved anything because we don't even know what it is we're changing. And that's, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the biggest arguments that professionals have in favor of doing real ear verification. So the people who are detractors from it, they're like, oh, well, you can verify up to prescriptive targets, but patients are going to feel like that's too loud here initially. And like, it might be, and that's why we taper it. We turn it down temporarily as we build them up to their full prescription. But this first fit strategy by hearing aid manufacturers is intended for comfort of sound to reduce return rates of the hearing aids, because they know that a lot of providers are not going to be doing the proper follow-up to educate the patient on here's what you're going to experience, here's how we can correct for this. But the providers who are in favor of it, like, listen, even if you don't program to full prescription right off the bat, at least know what they're getting inside of their ear canal. And if you don't run real ear measurement, you have no clue.
So, you need to have a good baseline, because even yesterday we had the patient where everyone's ear canals are different, and even one side to the other ear canals are different. With the resonant frequency, they're in people's ear canals because it's a tube. So it funnels sound, spikes it in a certain area. Yesterday we had a patient who had a very strong resonant frequency where it was spiked up. And even dropping out the frequency in that area still had the spike. But if you just left it at first fit, it would have been way over amplified in that area and uncomfortable to wear. So that's why it's important to do real ear, so we can at least get the formation of what it should look like, and then we just bring it down to a comfortable level so their brain can adapt and then slowly work them up.
Yeah.
Well, and part of too what this fitting process as a whole is truly about is that, you know, we have our prescriptions that are done based off of an average, right? Which means that there are people who need a lot more sound to hear their best when than what their prescription might call for, and then people who need a lot less. Right? And it's not necessarily our job to program every hearing aid by the time we're done with that fitting process, dead on that prescription for every single person. Our job is to find out on that continuum of human beings, where does this particular person fall? How much does this person need in order to be their most successful? And it will not look the same even on two people with identical hearing losses, because not only will their brains not process that sound the same way, they're not going to be in the exact same world as one another either. And so it should always be this highly personalized process, because science could tell me I've got the best hearing aid fitting that has ever been hearing aid fitted. But at the end of the day, if I'm not meeting that person's goals, if I'm not programming it for that person, I've done a really cruddy job. I should quit.
This brings up one of my favorite patient stories about real ear measurement. Okay, so I was probably an audiologist at this point for 2 years. Little old lady comes in, the cutest thing in the world. She's no longer a patient because she moved out to the East Coast. But I'm sure her provider's thinking that we're horrible, and I'll tell you why here in a second. So she comes in. She's got really old hearing aids. She's like, I need new hearing aids. I'm like, no problem. I run a measure on her old devices. I'm like, boy, these things are underprogrammed for this individual, underamplified. So I'm like, great, I'm going to get these new hearing aids in, and I'm going to program her to her full prescription. She's going to be like, you're the most amazing thing in the world. And I'm like, I know, right?
May I pause and ask a question? Was she having difficulty hearing with her previous devices?
She was having some difficulty hearing with her previous devices, but we weren't sure. She was kind of chalking it up to, my devices are like 9 years old. So like, okay. So, but I still think like I can do a better job of this. So she comes in, her husband's a very soft-spoken individual. They like to pray every morning, and her biggest thing is that she's like, I want to hear him pray in the morning. And she couldn't do that with her old devices. So I got her the new hearing aids. I programmed her perfectly to her prescriptive targets. I'm like, you're going to hear awesome with this. She goes home, she comes back, she's like, I really couldn't wear them for the first week. And I'm like, well, why? And she's like, it's just way too loud. I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me turn you down. So I turn it down. We ended up turning it down about 12 steps.
Oh, wow.
So 12 decibels, right? We cut the perceptual volume in half, more than half for that. And I'm like, okay, but here's the thing. Here's what the trade-off is with that. And so she comes back a week or 2 weeks later, and she's like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. I can hear my soft-spoken husband praying in the morning. I can do all of these other things. I can go to noisy places and hear well there too. Things aren't too loud. You're a miracle worker. And I'm thinking like, geez, I'm like, is this malpractice? I have you 12 decibels below your prescription across the entire frequency range, but she's reporting that she's hearing awesome.
And that's the point.
That is the moment where I knew like, that's right. So when you look at these prescriptions, they're based off of a distribution, a bell curve.
Yeah.
So if I program her to dead center of the prescription, the vast majority of people will be great with that. Plus or minus one standard deviation. What is that? 67% of the population, roughly 68. I don't remember exactly. But she was an outlier on the side that she needed substantially less amplification for her to hear her best. On the other side of that, we all have patients that are on the far right side of that distribution where we're like, boy, is this malpractice? Where I'm blasting out their ears, but we call them what?
Power junkies.
We call them power. You guys are power junkies if you're like 10, 15 decibels over your prescriptive targets. But it was literally 2 years into my career before I became less dogmatic about programming exactly to target for everyone no matter what. But I think that it has led to a better understanding of how human auditory systems work, and everybody's system is a little bit different, which is why we put all of our patients through a so much more extensive process to figure this stuff out. But the programming aspect of this aside, because we will make adjustments on their hearing aids until their 6-week follow-up visit, 4 visits in, but there's other stuff that we actually have to make sure that we do throughout this process. I mean, let's talk about Bluetooth for a second. Getting patients familiar with Bluetooth, Jenna.
Bluetooth is always a struggle because, I mean, it depends on the phone. It depends on also how far the patient wants to go with it as well. If they just want it for streaming, just for phone calls, we can kind of tailor it based on what their needs are as well. But we make sure on the very first week, as long as the patient wants it, to actually get them set up with the app, with Bluetooth. We give them a call during the appointment, make sure the streaming sounds good. If they feel like right off the bat they want a little bit more bass, we go back into the programming, make some adjustments. So we try to send them off for the very first week with a good baseline to go off of. And then we still, of course, tell them to report back on things that they like, things that they don't like. And so Bluetooth is one of the more finicky things in general. But
I like to tell all my patients that I don't care what manufacturer your hearing aids are. Every hearing aid, when it comes to Bluetooth, will have its quirks. Whether it's quirks with its connectivity, whether it's quirks with the app, they all have them. And it's my job to make sure that I teach you what those quirks might be. Because even in the same manufacturer with the same phone, sometimes we get some different things. But it's my job to teach you what those things are and then how to mitigate them. And for a lot of individuals with Bluetooth and the apps and the smartphones, especially for individuals who aren't necessarily tech savvy or who might be a little bit older, it can sometimes be daunting to feel like you have to use all of these pieces. And what I do appreciate about at least the apps in general, they do have a lot of features you can use, but to Jenna's point, if you don't want to use the feature, you do not have to use it. If you can get in the app or even with your push buttons on the hearing aids and you can turn up and down your volume, you can wear them and you can tell me what you experience with them, I will take that the rest of the way. Because all of these hearing aids, especially when we start getting into those top tier pieces of technology, they are truly designed to work very automatically, where if we've done our jobs very well and we've listened to all of that feedback beginning at that first fitting, beginning at that first week follow-up, by the time we hit the end of that, right, they really should be functioning by themselves, where maybe you feel like you need to change the volume every now and again. Maybe you change a program for, very specific environments. But outside of that, we really shouldn't be touching too much of your devices.
I mean, there was a day predating you two in the industry where hearing aids did not interact with your smartphone, right? Now, smartphones did exist when I first got into the industry, but it was 2 years before they had a direct connection with hearing aids. Now, a lot of people think that the data logging that we do, so at these follow-up visits, we get really into the data of them. Some manufacturers give us better quality data than others, but for the ones that give us good quality data, we use that to help make adjustments on their settings to make them function more automatically the way the patient wants them to function. But yes, the Bluetooth is not a mandatory for hearing aids to have this automatic functionality. If you want to have the Bluetooth, by all means, and that Bluetooth allows us to do remote programming adjustments on the hearing aids. So we generally encourage that if you're open to it, at least trying it out and at least letting us connect your hearing aids up with your app on your phone. So we do have that capability, especially if someone lives further away from us. We get a lot of people who travel to our clinic to see us. So the Bluetooth has been a blessing and a curse at the same time. We could probably cut down our fitting sequence by an appointment if we didn't have any Bluetooth stuff to do, but it is what it is. If it gives better quality of life to the end user, then we will absolutely incorporate that into the process.
And some of the other things too, so we've talked a lot about that first initial fitting visit. We've talked about that first follow-up visit. Now, this next piece, I sometimes do at that first follow-up visit, depending on timing and all of those things, but definitely at least by that 3-week follow-up visit. So another hour we have scheduled 3 weeks after that initial fitting. Definitely going over care and maintenance of our devices, 100%. Because what I have found, both working in other places, working here, a lot of people have not been educated on how to actually clean their devices. And I see this a lot, particularly with the people who are being refit with their devices that they came to us with, particularly in those individuals where during their consultation, we might find that, just the hearing aid has never been cleaned. And then we might say, oh, when was the last time you changed a wax trap? what's a
What?
wax trap,
Yeah.
right? And so during one of those, either that 1 week or that 3 week follow-up, we are giving out a cleaning kit. And inside this cleaning kit, I'm very proud of these. We have our little cleaning cards that give you what you should be doing weekly, what you should be doing more as needed. So brushing your microphones weekly, everybody, weekly, okay? We also want to make sure that we're wiping them down with alcohol wipes so that we're not getting, bacteria and earwax put back into the ears. Changing your wax trap as needed, right? So those are the pieces. So that card details those things. Of course, all of the supplies are also in that little coin purse, cleaning kit. What I also like about those cards is that on the back, if you are someone who feels confident in using a QR code, that QR code on the back will actually bring you to a video of us cleaning a hearing aid so that you can remind yourself what those things might be too. So really setting up not only for just that first education piece, but also for long-term, because let's just say a month goes by and, I think, Dr. Beck told me that I need to change my wax trap in about a month. What's a wax trap again? What is that again? Video, boom, right there for you, right?
I think there's also the important, even just last week, one of the patients, at least I always do it where I do one of the hearing aids and then I give it to them and then like, your turn now, and they're like, oh, this is a test. But even one of my patients last week said, it's nice that you actually have me do it as well. You don't just show me and be like, good luck doing it yourself, because really the strategy to how you do things is really important as well. Because a lot of the times someone comes back and they're like, when we notice that one of the microphones is blocked up, and we're like, show us again how you clean that, and they're
brushing
just like,
the battery contacts
exactly.
at the bottom or something, right? And again, that's part of that learning process, right? It's not a judgment or anything, but it's why we have fitting and follow-up processes the way we do, because we go over so much information, as we should be, but it's a lot to take in. And it was in, I think, the late 90s, there was a study that was done that said when someone goes to the doctor's office, people will remember 50% of what is told to them. And then 50% of what they do actually remember is incorrect in some form. So realistically, people are actually leaving with, about 25% of the information that we tell them. And so if we're trying to shove everything into 2 small 30-minute visits, a fitting and a follow-up, there's going to be gaps in education. So much stuff. Not only in the short term, but long-term health of their ears and their hearing, long-term health of their devices. I mean, I want everyone to be able to get to that 9-year mark with their devices if they would like to do that. But if we're not cleaning and maintaining, we're going to have malfunctions long term. We have to make sure we have the infrastructure in our practices to make sure that people long term do not struggle, do not suffer, get what they need out of their devices.
Well, it makes me feel better about the Applied360 Fit and Refit processes, because if we do 4 visits total, that total 4 hours and 15 minutes, I like to think that you add all the 25% from each one, and then by the time they're done, they're like, I understand everything. You get an hour.
You get an hour though, right? They're getting 25% of 4 hours and 15 minutes, but 4 hours, let's say. That's an hour's worth of the 4 hours of stuff we've reviewed with them. That's still proportionally tiny. Well,
right? and the funny thing is that we'll go into, and that's not what we're talking about today, but we have our Applied360 Thrive follow-up care plan for our new patients in our clinic, because there's so much stuff that we teach them over the course of the year. And what do we revisit multiple times a year? The care and maintenance, the cleaning of their hearing aids. It's always that, because we want our patients to be as self-sufficient as possible, so they don't need us all the time long term. Patients who come in, they're like, I had to go in every 3 months to get my hearing aids wax trap changed at the clinic that I go to, and I'm like, why don't you do it yourself? Well, they never told me how to do it. I'm like, I don't know what they're trying, breed dependency or something like that. We're trying to breed independency for our patients in a lot of cases.
Well, and I think too, part of that is, it's a great thing to be able to offer. I know that a lot of clinics will do free cleanings, for the rest of the lifespan of your device or what have you, which is great. But also, too, it's one extra step. It's one more drive. It's one more thing. And especially for us with so many out-of-town patients. I've got patients who live in Guam, right? I can't be, having them come to me every 3 months to change their wax filters, their wax traps. So if I don't teach that to them, then 3 months are going to go by. Their hearing aids they will think that their hearing aids have stopped working. They won't wear them. And all they really needed was just to change a little white filter,
And we even teach them more, the people who are out of town. We actually send them home with extra receiver wires and teach them how to change the receiver wires, which is something that maybe you're not supposed to do, whatever, right? It's in our patient's best interest to do it, so we do it.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
so we end up getting to the last visit of our Applied 360 Fit protocol, our best practice protocol. What happens really at this last visit, Jenna?
Well, we're kind of doing all the fine tuning at the end of it, making sure everything's wrapped up in a nice little box. But then at the very first appointment, we also ask them about the different things that they want to be hearing better with the whole entire process that we're doing. And then that way, by the end of it, we're going to go over all of those things again and see, are they worse, no different, slightly better, better, or much better? We like to see for successful treatment, everything in the better to much better. Slightly better is okay if it's just a limitation of their hearing system or of the devices themselves, but to be able to see really if we are hitting everything that they want out of the hearing aid, we need to ask them at the end of it and see their perspective. And I think it also helps because through this process, it is a total of 6 weeks. So it's gradual changes across the board, but being able to have them also step back and see, oh yeah, how well am I hearing now versus before? It gives them a good understanding of the differences that having proper hearing can make.
That's right. Yeah. If we've done our job well, objectively well, we should see the subjective improvement by the patient at the end of that time. And I mean, we do this over the course of 6 weeks for a very particular reason. It's the reason why we don't have them come in every 2 or 3 days to make adjustments and all that, because their brain takes time to adapt. We know based on research, it takes around 30 days to have full adaptation to new auditory treatment. And so when we do this validation outcome measure at the 6-week mark, we can identify, okay, through all the changes we've made, all the objective programming stuff that we did to verify them to their prescription, how are they actually performing in the real world? And, a lot of individuals are like, oh yeah, like I'm much better there. And if it is a slightly better, or sometimes there's a no difference.
Yeah.
So, and I'll give an example for this. So a patient was like, listen, I do not want to set up my smartphone with my hearing aids, but I struggle on phone calls. And so they continue to have to either hold the phone up to their ear or do speakerphone. And they come in at their 6-week mark and everything else is much better, much better, much better. And then it's like, well, I'm not really hearing that much better on the phone. I'm like, okay, well, we have an option that will fix that. I can make that much better, but you have to let me connect the hearing aids up to your phone. At that point, they're like, well, that's the last thing I really want to accomplish. Let's go ahead and do it. Not really wanting to, but we did it. We did a demo call and we're like, oh my gosh, that is so much better, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you actually need that, not just for us to know that their treatment's going well. Sometimes we need that so the patient knows how well their treatment's going. This inevitably happens too. Someone will come back a year later after they have ignored our instructions on care and maintenance. They don't come in for their follow-up visits, and their hearing aids are plugged up with wax and debris. There's like no sound coming out of the hearing aid, and they're like, these hearing aids have never worked well for me. And we're like, that's funny.
But you told me.
Because you told me, like you, not me. Like you told me everything was much better when we got done with the fitting process. So what happened between then and a year after then? Well, you didn't come in for your follow-up visits. We weren't able to continuously train you on the things that you needed to know about best practice follow-up care. And here they are in a struggling position. And then it clicks for them at that point.
And I think that too it lends itself as well to why we do that 360 Thrive program, which I know we're going to have a whole other episode about, but it is that follow-up care for that entire first year when after this initial fitting period. Because this initial fitting period is about 45 days, 6 weeks, right? And that whole year afterward, it is still education. It is still, programming changes, right? Because someone's not going to necessarily go to every environment that's important to them in that first 6 weeks, right? I might fit you in January, just following all of your challenges at the holidays in December, but we don't get back to the holidays until December again, right? And so to not have, again, that infrastructure built in where we can address all of those things as your life does continue to also change, that would be on us, right? And so the infrastructure to do this well has got to be built in there.
So if we do this very procedurally throughout the entire process in a person-centered care way, so we're following comprehensive best practices, we're making sure that we're communicating all of this stuff that we're doing with the patient, and they become joint decision makers in everything that we do, that sets them up for maximum success with their new hearing aids. But we also have a refit process that we do. So when someone comes in, they have existing hearing aids, like I mentioned earlier in the episode. They've had their hearing aids for maybe a couple years. They're like, listen, I spent good money on these devices. I've never really heard well with them. I saw one of your guys' videos talking about, oh, reeler measurement, what is that? But let me go and schedule a consultation. So we schedule them for a review consultation so we can actually figure out what the heck is going on with their hearing aids. Now, in that review consultation, we are able to identify why their treatment is not going well. And then we say, listen, we need to put you through a comprehensive 45-day best practice fitting sequence. So we're recommending our Applied360 Refit program for you. You're going to come in with your existing hearing aids. We are not dispensing new hearing aids to these individuals. They come in with their existing hearing aids, and we put them through the exact same process that we put a brand new hearing aid user through. Now, they might have a little bit better understanding of the app or how the Bluetooth works or how their push buttons work because they've had these hearing aids for a couple of years. But we don't care. We re-instruct them on literally everything throughout that entire process.
And what I've actually found, I think I mentioned this a little bit before with our maintenance and cleaning and the care and maintenance of the devices. A lot of these things are brand new to them, right? So during that initial, review consultation, and we run that real ear measurement, and we find out that I've seen it up to 40 decibels below their prescriptive targets, particularly for soft speech, and their biggest complaint is that they can't hear their soft-spoken partner. Well, yeah, that is why. Or the hearing aid maintenance is bad. Maybe diagnostics were never run on the devices themselves and they've been malfunctioning since day one. I mean, there's so many pieces to that, just the consultative process, and then that whole refitting, identifying where is your prescription, what is comfortable, all of those same things. How are you hearing with the devices once we do get you refit, care and maintenance. But I have found time and time again that with that refit process, I actually find that the refit process is even more important to identify the gaps in the education or just the things that are completely wrong in their minds about how this is actually supposed to be done because they were just not afforded that the first time around, which I could rant for hours about how frustrated that makes me because I don't know about you, but I did not get into this business to sell a hearing aid. That's the least fun part of all of it. It's the treating of the hearing loss. And to know that they have done the things that they are supposed to do as the person with hearing loss. They've gone to the audiologist, they've gone to the specialist, they've gotten the devices, and they're still not hearing well when they could be hearing well for that entire time.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal.
It makes me want to scream.
Well, I mean, you have personal experience. In fact, you both have personal experience with this. So you were talking about your grandma the other day.
Yep, I was. My grandma, bless her, she is my favorite person, one of my favorite people in the entire world. She has had hearing aids for a very long time and has always struggled, always with them. And I was still in school when she was just having a hard time, and we were learning about, I was in my first year, so I knew enough to be dangerous at that point, right? So I went with her to her audiologist. And needless to say, I don't think she ever wants to see me again there because...
when you say she, you mean
the
audiologist, not your grandma.
Yes, because I asked the question... I asked a couple questions. One, does she need custom ear molds? Yes, she did. Which, don't know if she would have actually recommended those if I hadn't been there. But then I asked, well, do you do real ear verification? Her response was, it makes me so upset. You can treat your patients the way you want to, and I'll treat my patients the way I want to. And especially as a student, that was so very jarring to me because... And maybe I asked the question in an accusatory way, which was not my intention. I have been told that sometimes my questions can come off rather blunt, which fair enough.
But I really
But I really just wanted to know because I had learned that this is the way to do it. And then my grandma was struggling, but this also wasn't being done. And I had to wonder, is that why? Now, of course, fast forward, I am now officially Dr. Beck. I'm successful in my field. I feel like I'm very good at my job. I finally get to bring my grandma in to get her new hearing aids. And I ran real ear verification on her old hearing aids. It is one of the worst ones that I have ever actually seen. She was nowhere near her prescription. She was close in like a couple of spots, but just no wonder. I finally got her. I did get her fit with new devices. So she was not technically in that refit category that we're talking about, but we did new devices of the same manufacturer. So she was in the correct manufacturer. At the time when she got them, she was in the correct devices for her. Of course, there's just newer stuff now. But I had driven her to her appointment with me, and I could not have a conversation with her in the car on the way to the appointment. Just she couldn't hear just so bad.
You drove her to the appointment
with me,
yep.
right? And then I took her home after her appointment. We're driving home with her new hearing aids. The music is on, and I was sort of doing this on purpose, but music was on. We took the freeway, so we knew it was loud. Whole entire conversation. Not a single what was asked. And she gets out of the car and she goes, I think these work. Like she was utterly dumbfounded that this is how she should have been hearing for the decade before I finally got into practice. And just
you can see that. You can see that in everybody that you either do a refit on because they wouldn't come into us if they weren't struggling, right? But you see this this like light go off in their head, like, oh my gosh, like you're telling me I could have been hearing this way that whole time, and it kind of breaks your heart to know, like listen, but it's not our job to dwell on the past. It's the second best time to plant a tree is today. The best time is 100 years ago, but the second best time is today. And so from this point forward, your grandma gets to experience what it's like to actually hear again, which is amazing. And fortunately for you, your father actually got to go through this 8 years earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Growing up, he's had many different hearing aids, and I've seen him go to other audiologists. And now 8 years ago, he found you as well, and just seeing the difference of the care that he got before versus the improvement that he got and just his quality of life after he got that done. Same as you, my undergrad was in kinesiology. I was gonna go into physical therapy, did my externship with that, realized that was not where I was gonna end up.
Amen, sister. I'm right there with you.
My husband's a physical therapist. I could not do his job. Bless him.
Yeah, no. Still amazing people who do it, but it was an avenue. I thought neurology for 2 years as well.
Oh, that was
but yeah. So that was a debate, but then through the whole entire process, I knew I wanted medical field in general, and then I saw the struggles that my father went through, but then the improvement that he had with quality care made me realize, like, that's what I want to do. I want to have that impact on other people.
So not to fluff his ego, but is he really the reason then that you became an audiologist? Keep your ego over there.
To be fair, yes.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, so to be fair though, the struggles that he had, because a lot of people go into the profession because they see a loved one having struggles without a resolution, and then they want to be the solution to the problem for their loved one, right? I forget what part of your program you were in. Were you a junior,
were you already
senior?
in the program?
I finished, it was when I was like 20 years old. So I was still in kinesiology.
Okay, yeah.
When I was going to his appointments and realizing,
That's so fun.
Yeah, so
we joke all the time with patients.
Full circle moment,
I've known Jenna longer than anyone else in our clinic, except for Ashley, obviously. But it's kind of funny to see that come full circle. Like I had no idea 8 years ago that Jenna would eventually become an audiologist in our clinic.
I didn't know that. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's super cool.
So, and her dad's he's been on to a couple of different sets of hearing aids. He gets some improvement each time. Technology improves as well. And as long as you're doing the right things from a fitting process, you can optimize that technology. And so from the refit side of things, people think that, okay, I get a pair of hearing aids. They'll come into the clinic sometimes with a hearing aid that's a year or 2 years old. In fact, I have a patient who got hearing aids based off of a review that I did on my channel. He goes in with these hearing aids to his professional to get them. He got them fully funded through insurance, so there was no out-of-pocket cost for him. He'd been going to this clinic for years, decades.
May I ask what hearing aids he was wearing?
He was wearing the Phonak Audio Sphere hearing aids.
Oh, great.
He had them for 6 months, I believe, by the time he called our clinic. And he's like, listen, I got these amazing hearing aids that Dr. Cliff was talking about. I'm hearing worse with these than I did with my last pair of hearing aids. What gives? And so Ashley was taking the call, and she's like, well, we're happy to do an Applied 360 review consultation with you. If you want to come out from your home state of California, we'll do that for you. So he comes out, and he's a very nice guy. And he came out. We did all of his testing. I did all the diagnostic measures on his hearing aids, real ear verification, found out that he's substantially over amplified in the low frequencies. And what is his reporting? If I tell you that someone is over amplified in the low frequencies, as an audiologist, what do you say?
Are you asking me or Jenna as the student?
I'll ask you, Dr. Beck.
Well, anytime this, if you tell me that we've got over amplification of the
what
lows,
would the patient say?
The patient will absolutely tell us, well, I can hear better. The clarity is not there, or I go into background noise and the noise is just so loud. I actually feel like I could take my hearing aids out and I hear better without them in, and that just shouldn't be the way it is. And no, you're right, it shouldn't be.
And that's exactly what he said, and I did not prep you for any of this.
Oh no, that's why I even asked if we're asking Jenna or me.
So he's reporting this stuff to me like, I think I'm going to get an overamplification here because we're in ultra power receivers. I look at the software. Yeah, I look at the software before I did realer verification, so I'm getting an idea where did they amplify him at, and I can see that from first fit of the manufacturer they increased everything up, and I'm like, ugh, I think I'm going to get an overamplification here.
What was his hearing loss like?
Severe to profound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Mostly flat.
Oh yeah, like it was. I want to say probably 70 dB at 250 and 500 hertz. So he was down there to start, and then obviously got worse. So I put him through this review process, and I'm like, oh my gosh, your low frequencies are way over amplified. Now his word recognition scores were not 100% by any means, but I'm like, still, like, you have to follow the rules when you're treating a hearing loss. You can't over amplify low frequencies and expect to get anything other than things are way too loud, background noise is distracting me more, I get no clarity even though I know that people are talking, right? So he actually has to go home and think about it. He's like, I still am not 100% sure. And
even after seeing the real ear?
Even after seeing the real ear. And you know why? Because he still had some level of mistrust because I said that these hearing aids were good in a review, and he trusted me, and then he wasn't getting that good result. And after he took some time to think about it, he called back and he's like, yep, I want to go through your Applied360 refit process. Exact same hearing aids, exact same ear molds. Didn't even have to change the ear molds on this individual. We go in, we completely reset his programming to match his prescriptive targets the best that I can get them. Clearly, we missed some high frequency targets. He had some completely dead ranges out in the high frequencies, but almost instantaneously, he's like, this sounds way better. Things are not like, I'm not having to turn down the volume. I can leave it here. I'm getting better clarity out of things. And then when we put him through auditory training, he's just that much better, right? So that's the power of a refit process on existing hearing aids. If you have good hearing aids already, we're not just going to be like, oh, you need to switch to something else so we can sell a different hearing aid to a patient, to your point. Our goal is to optimize someone's ability to hear. Now, if it does require, let's say that the Spheres, great hearing aids, we would all agree on that, correct? If the Sphere hearing aids were not the actual right hearing aids for him, I would have made a recommendation to switch him out of those devices. But if I believe that I can get an optimal treatment outcome with existing technology, or you guys feel that way, we're absolutely going to do that.
And sometimes I'll even, let's say I do identify, I had this patient come in not too long ago who was in the absolute incorrect devices for their hearing loss. I mean, completely. And we had the conversation surrounding. I said, look, this is what I'm seeing. This is what these devices are capable of. They are so poorly fit that yes, I could absolutely make these better than what you're currently getting. Substantially. I mean, we're talking like that's how badly programmed they were. And also too, the hearing that you're asking me for can be accomplished if we do this. What are your thoughts on this? And they said, no, just right now I have to use the devices I already have. Great. That is part of that best practices person-centered care, because at the end of the day, my goal is not, again, just to sell the next device, right? My goal is that I have to have a treatment plan that's going to work well for the person. And you know what? In 2-3 years, because these hearing aids were brand new, I mean, just outside the return window, which kind of ground my gears a little bit. But we made them work. And you know what? This person is actually hearing fabulously. They're like, I know it could be better because the things that they're missing are the things that I told them would still be more challenging things. But they're like, I'm getting through my workday, and that was the most important thing to me. And when I can do this again, I'm absolutely going to make sure that we do this the other way this next time.
Well, it brings up a perfect final point here, which is you can have the non-ideal hearing aid for a patient, fit and program following a comprehensive best practice protocol like we do in the Applied360 Fit and Refit processes, and get a better treatment outcome than you can have with the best hearing aid in the world, $1 billion hearing aid, if you will, Jenna.
Billion. Gold-plated.
Yeah.
Gold-plated.
Right?
Could be the best thing since sliced bread and Betty White.
And Betty White. And not do as well with that amazing hearing aid if you do not go through a fit process that actually follows comprehensive audiologic best practices. So with that said, guys, that was fantastic discussion. A lot of patient stories there actually that we got to share, which is fun. I think you guys enjoyed that. If you did, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well. And we'll see you in the next episode.